Good afternoon. My name is Ashleigh Dougill. As Jennifer said, I'm a student at the Clark Honors College here at the University of Oregon. And to start off, I would like to thank Myra Johnson-Orange and Wilson Wewa for attending today, and also for supporting us in our research for this project. It's been really beneficial and enlightening. Also for Jennifer and Kevin's support throughout this entire project, and Jim Gardner's as well. My topic is traditional persistence, the past and present Paiute diet. And when I first began this class, we were first discussing decolonizing research, and I really was interested from the Paiute's perspective how this had affected their traditional diet. Originally, the Paiutes had been a nomadic people who subsisted from hunting and gathering seasonal rounds. And so they occupied a large region in Oregon. Almost 75% of Oregon originally belonged to the Northern Paiutes. And with the arrival of Western settlers, their population and their territory was dramatically decreased. And suddenly, these people who had been living nomadically were forced to live on reservations. And so I wanted to just explore how these changes in lifestyle affected their diet in the past, but then also recurring into the present. What traditions and what dietary traditions had they been able to retain in their present culture? So I went into this project really thinking about this question. How was the traditional diet and resulting lifestyle and the culture of the Northern Paiute affected by their forced exodus from their homeland from 1872 to 1900? And how have these changes impacted their lives currently? So I really began to flesh out this research question when I went on my field research trip with Jennifer and Kevin to Warm Springs, and visiting the Paiute homeland really helped me contextualize my paper visually and put a face to facts. Before this trip, I knew the basics behind the Paiutes. I knew the facts that I had read in books, but meeting the people from this culture, talking with them face to face, really helped me understand where people were coming from and let me provide a modern perspective for my paper. I realized that this culture wasn't just something we could read about, it was something that was still happening today. And with this in mind, I tried to approach my research with this focus. One of the difficulties that I found when I was looking at my sources is that a lot of the primary sources were from agents and from the various reservations that the Paiutes had been living on. And so this was an extremely Western perspective, though you couldn't really hear the Paiute voice in a lot of these records. And so I had to read between the lines a lot of the time and try to search for what had been almost eliminated. And I tried to sort of compensate for this in a modern perspective. Made sure that I talked to people from the Paiute who were living today, the living history, and brought that into my paper. I decided to organize my research into 4 steps, looking at the time that the Paiutes had spent on Mount Hill Reservation here in Oregon, in present-day Burns, then moving into Yakima in Washington, then back to Warm Springs in Central Oregon as well, and then present-day continuing traditions. So my hypothesis was, although the Paiute were pressured to accept components of the Western diet over time, resulting in health complications, a more sedentary lifestyle, and the implementation of other Western values, the implications of this shift have been counteracted by encouraging community engagement and the persistence of traditions and lifestyle. So, beginning with Malheur, I was looking at the time between 1872 and 1878, particularly at special collections at the University of Oregon, Microfilm, and Washington State University Digital Archives. When the Paiutes were first moved to Malheur, this really laid the groundwork for a history of American influence on their culture. The agents at Malheur influenced everything from gender roles, eating times, work habits, food choices, methods of acquiring food. They portrayed sporadic work as lazy and random eating as gluttonous. These were both components of the traditional nomadic lifestyle. And originally, men had been the ones who would hunt, while women would gather the roots and berries and prepare that. And with their forced move onto reservations, sedentary lifestyle, suddenly the men were the ones who were in charge of agriculture. This was a complete swap in gender roles and something that the Paiutes had to deal with. So the first agent at Malheur was Parrish, Agent Parrish, and he was more accepting of the Paiute ways and traditions. He actually recognized the necessity of the hunting and gathering grounds for the Paiute ways, and encouraged a melding of traditional methods with his own Western views. At his school, he actually encouraged the Paiute girls, the Paiute children, to gather roots traditionally and then bring them back to the reservation and cook them in a Western fashion. So he was encouraging this melding of cultures. He says to the governor of Oregon that it will probably be some years yet before these Indians settle down, showing that he's accepting of these ways. Reinhardt, on the other hand, is less open to the traditional Paiute methods. He follows Parrish, and he has a strict focus on enforcing Western culture, and therefore we see a greater resistance to his methods at the agency. And he restricts the traditional hunting and gathering grounds, which forces the Paiutes to rely more heavily on the food that's provided at the reservation. This is when we first begin to see some dietary changes and health afflictions within the actual Paiute population. And so next, in 1878, 1879, the Paiutes were moved to Yakima, and they were not accepted for their mobile habits and their traditional ways by either the Native American cultures that were already present on the reservation or the agents that were there. The Yakima reservation focused primarily on agriculture and agricultural techniques, and so some of the Paiutes did try to fit in to this method, to this idea. People such as Lee Winnemucca, the son of controversial figure Sarah Winnemucca, is written to have attempted to buy land and work for a wage, but the vast majority of Paiutes, in fact, would leave the reservation during the spring and summer and subsist naturally off of the surrounding area. And this earned them quite a reputation. Milroy, who is one of the agents at the reservation, calls them lazy, indolent, vicious, anti-civilization portion of the Indians, and with no fixed homes. So they were highly encouraged to move back to Warm Springs. So Warm Springs in present day, I talk about simultaneously. And today we see a prevalence of grocery stores, Western-style grocery stores, and cheap, unhealthy food around the reservation, which has influenced an increase in cardiovascular diseases and other Western diseases as well. And I define Western diseases as diseases that are a result of the Western diet, high in fats and other aspects of the Western culture. For example, in 2011, 66% of Warm Springs community was affected by cardiovascular diseases and 75% by obesity. These are alarming statistics that obviously did not come about just through lifestyle choices. It's been something that's been happening for a while. There was also a shift from roots to cattle in their culture that they're focusing on, and an idea that new or modern is better from some of the younger people. At the same time, people within the community are fighting back. They still practice their traditional festivals and eat their traditional foods at these festivals, including roots and berries, choke cherries, salmon, a lot of different foods survived through oral traditions and also written down. And hunting and gatherings continued and remembered by the Paiute elders. And recent community movements have served to raise awareness, such as school programs and community gardens at Warm Springs. So in conclusion, these have been gratifying results. The Paiutes are strong and persistent people. They never lost their original ways. They've just adapted and melded into a new culture, a new surprising culture that they would have never expected. Most of the misunderstandings between the Paiutes and American agents often were the result of misinterpretations of cultures. And though the Paiutes suffer from Western diseases, activism within the community has served to raise awareness and a more healthy style of life.